If you measure the evolution of dogs and their food in miles, it would be 379 miles long. We've changed their diet in literally less than 2 inches. Prior to World War II, we fed them canned horses from Nevada. We used to kill Mustangs and can them. When World War II came along, they needed the metal from the cans for the war. That's when we came up with an old product called the Gainsburger. The Gainsburger was a pressed plastic wrap, hamburger shaped, very smelly dog food. And that was our first introduction to kibble. And when kibble was introduced, we used to manufacture it under the eyes of the USDA. Shortly thereafter, they came up with a feeding board called AAFCO, American Association of Feed Control Officials. AAFCO, they have to grade all pet food. Unfortunately, the folks that sit on the AAFCO board are also Colgate-Palmolive, the Mars Corporation, and P&G. So the folks that are making the worst of the dog foods and the cat foods in America are the ones that are in charge of the AAFCO board. So the fox is literally in charge of the hen house. When we make kibble, we remove 90% of the moisture. Then we have to add a binder, similar to like a lamb and rice. We've heard of chicken and rice, and now grain-free. Unfortunately, when kibble is manufactured, all but 10% of the moisture is removed. And much like the hamburger that we have to put onto a grill, we have to put something with that hamburger as a binder. Without that, the hamburger falls apart on the grill. Well, think about cooking a kibble and processing it down to be extruded. So obviously there has to be a binder. And in this case, with the Hill Science diet, you see the chicken, but it's wet. It's not chicken meal down below. So everything in between the chicken and the chicken meal is what really is feeding the dog first. All binders. Whole grain wheat, cracked pearl barley is okay. Whole grain sorghum, that's grass, no nutritional value. Whole grain corn, super high allergen, as is corn gluten meal. Then you finally have your chicken meal. That's the first good protein you have, because the wet chicken is completely worthless. It went in wet. And then down below is dried beet pulp and soybean oil. No nutritional value on the dried beet pulp. Soybean oil is a super high allergen. Down near the bottom, taurine is added simply because there's not enough meat in the food to meet the requirements for taurine. And then apples, broccoli, carrots, and the cranberries and green peas are completely worthless. Where you see the salt, everything below salt is less than 1% of this ingredient panel. 0.07%. Then when you compare that to a good grained dog food like Canidae, everything you see in green is good. Chicken meal stays in position, heaviest weight. Turkey meal stays in position, heaviest weight. Lamb meal stays in position, heaviest weight. 3 solid proteins in a row. Then your binders are quality grained binders. Brown rice, white rice, rice bran, peas, potatoes, oatmeal, cracked pearl barley, and then your chicken fat for the preservative. All of these things in green are good solid foods or food sources for the dog. The quality in comparison to the previous science diet, it's dramatically higher, even though it's a grained food. These grains on any of these foods can be problematic, though, on older and dogs that are suffering from allergic issues. 95% of the time, it's from the binders in the food that they're eating. The remaining 4 to 5% can be things as simple as their treats, the type of treat they're eating, what the treat is made of, what they're bathing with, and how often they're bathing. All of these things play into these allergic reactions that these animals are suffering from. Food, treats, bathing, when they were fixed, shots, and flea products, heartworm products, all of these things play a huge role in the allergies that our pets are suffering from. So when folks are tired of seeing their dogs scratching and licking their feet and the constant biting at the base of their tail, it's time to erase the entire chalkboard and start all over again. Reevaluate everything that's going on in that dog's life. Once that's all completely erased and you can determine what is really going into that animal's mouth and onto that animal's body, you'll be able to relieve 99% of those problems that the dog is suffering from. Then we have the grain-free foods. The grain-free foods are going to use potato, sweet potato, or tapioca, or similar. Unfortunately, all of those binders turn to sugar. They're starch. They're carbohydrates. Carbohydrates dogs and cats don't need. They need 0 carbohydrates. So whenever you see a kibble, for instance, that is a weight control kibble, all they've done is bump up the carbohydrates in the food rather than the protein, and made it even more fattening for that poor dog that's supposed to be losing weight on this. It makes these dogs diabetic from all of the sugar that they're getting and the carbohydrates that they don't need or require at all. So when you have a food that's 70% moisture at the cellular level, you have half the processing or half the digestion time, half the water intake, and half the poop. The species correct diet for both the dog and cat is raw. So when we have kibble, and there's some really, really good kibbles out there, and the dogs and cats can do really well on them. But over a lifetime of feeding a medium grade food, you'll find that these dogs and cats start to suffer maladies later in life simply from eating too many carbohydrates and not enough protein.